Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos. I know, gosh, I have said this many times, but this one is, I've been geeking out for this podcast for quite some time, and I'm so appreciative of the guest being flexible, as we've worked to try to make this happen. I am excited on this podcast and this episode personally for a lot of reasons. I've been reading and looking into the background of the guest today, and it's someone who I don't normally always get on this show, and I think you as listeners are going to love this because it's not another education figurehead. We're talking with someone who has done the Hollywood journey and the movie journey and a tech CEO 3 times over, and just now focusing on productivity and burnout, but also the things that those who know me love, the idea of the power of story, the power of curiosity, how we build systems that work. And so I am so excited for where this conversation is going to go. And so I want to introduce my guest, allow him to introduce himself. So Stephen, welcome to the show. I know I'm going to go on a limb here that the majority of the audience of this podcast probably doesn't know who you are, not because you're not amazing, but just our worlds probably haven't collided. So let's start off with, who are you? What do you do? And what in the world do you got going on?
Aaron, let me just say, if I bring half the energy to this pod that you just brought, it's going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. I'm feeling it already.
I'm pumped up. I'm on the court. This is great. I've got my warm-up suit on. This is going to be a great day. Okay, so all kidding aside, I'm really happy to be here. Let me throw out a couple quick things for those listening at home or in the car about what may be interesting about this episode or why you might want to tune out, right? Because there are things I have to share that, as Aaron said, are a little different than maybe things you hear every week. So one interesting data point is my mom was a high school math teacher in the Bronx back when it was get knives pulled on you kind of Bronx. And definitely infused my childhood with a sense of curiosity and told me about the best students she ever had and the worst students she ever had and kind of what their characteristics were. And I think in that definitely built in me a sense of go out in the world, discover, learn. The world's an amazing place if you ask questions. So there's that. And then what Aaron was saying about my story, I'll tell you, my story in many ways is almost Forrest Gump-like in this way. It is a series of things that have happened to me about every 5 years that are just these lucky accidents that fall in my lap. And I'd like to believe I couple that with making something of them, work really hard to go, ooh, this could be something, right? So I will give you, as briefly as I can, because everyone loves talking about themselves, an overview of my path so that everything we talk about in this episode, you guys can kind of hang it on that sort of story and be like, oh, that's from this era. Oh, that's from this era, right? So I mentioned my mom was a high school math teacher. She worked hard and ended up becoming a software engineer at IBM back in the day, as the kids say. And my dad was a hardware engineer designing chips, logic chips, essentially CPUs. And that's how they met. They were both at IBM. So I was the kid of two engineers. Shockingly, when your mom's a great ice skater, you learn to ice skate when you're little, right? So I learned to code, and I was a little code monkey. And it was really fun for me. I went to Los Angeles. I grew up on the East Coast in New York and in Virginia. I went to Los Angeles to go to USC for college, which is where the first sort of like lucky, strange thing happens is they invited me to come out. And they're a very strong journalism school. They know I was interested in storytelling and journalism. And I had a job at IBM because I was a Watson Scholar. So I could work at IBM when I wanted to earn money for school. So it's kind of this weird sort of strange existence of, hey, I'm doing this sort of creative stuff. And USC is a great cinema school. So a lot of my buddies in the dorm were aspiring Spielbergs and Lucases, right? So you go out on Tuesday night and you see a late movie and you all go to the diner and debate, what was great about the movie? Did you like Star Wars?
Yeah,
whatever, right? And that turned into a moment where I could speak engineer because I'd been trained as one. My parents are both engineers. And I learned how to speak creative. And that little intersection of people who could speak both, who could talk to an engineer about, I understand the architecture of what the solution is. Like, let's talk about that. But could also say, like, how does this work for the character at this moment in the movie, right? Like, what needs to happen here? And it was around the time that film became digital. In other words, RAM and CPUs and stuff got to the point they could handle film, which is a very large data object, right? So you had this explosion of non-linear editing systems like Avids, Pro Tools for audio, computer graphics being available. And I was lucky. I was like, the girl in the chorus line that gets plucked, like, hey, you seem a good dancer. You speak French. Come here, like that sort of thing. So I got pulled into, as I was a junior, into this world of, hey, we're going to do computer generated images for movies. And I could produce them pretty well because I could speak to the engineers in a really early part of this field, right? I ended up doing 14 movies, producing the digital effects, computer generated effects, about 14 movies and doing main titles. And the directors who could afford that, who could get their studio to pay tens of millions of dollars to do this, were pretty deep in their careers. So I got to do Jim Cameron's True Lies, work with Spielberg on the DreamWorks logo, work with Woody Allen and Jim Jarmusch and David Fincher on Seven, and a bunch of movies. That led to meeting the director and producer of Independence Day when they had just come off Stargate. And they asked me to come and work on that movie alone with them. Like, stop doing multiple movies at a time, but come and like work on production. I did that. I produced the digital effects for Independence Day. Very luckily, we won the Academy Award for the visual effects. I'm not going to lie, that helps everybody's career. Everybody close to the visual effects line movie, it just is really nice when you're like, oh, I did that movie. It's like, oh yeah, I saw you at the Academy Awards.
Yeah, right.
So I ended up starting a company with Roland and Dean. And that was my first sort of real hard tech company that I ran and co-owned. And we did digital effects for other people's movies and for our own movies. Raised about 15 million. Sold it 4 years later. We got an offer from Das Werk for about 90. So it was about a 6x, exit. And, as one thinks in their 20s, I'm so smart. I'm so good at this. I'm good looking. I'm invincible. I can fly. Like all the stupid things you believe in your 20s, right? Until life tells you. Right. So I did that, and I was definitely very full of myself. I'm like, this is great. So I thought, you know what? I don't want to wake up, be 30, 40, 50 years old and just be cranking out effects the rest of my life, sitting in a dark room with a computer doing that. How do I do something that's maybe more upstream, like putting movies together? Set myself to that. Again, got lucky, worked really hard. Ended up a few years later as an executive vice president at DreamWorks for Kurtzman Orsi. Went to 20th Century Fox. Was a vice president there, running like the Die Hard franchise, the Wolverine franchise, stuff like that. It was pretty cool. I got there, had a moment where I was like, wow, we're doing the Die Hard movie that was my period, right? Because there are a lot of people who sit in that chair at Fox over the years that do the Die Hard movies. I was just the guy for this short period of time. There was a guy before me and maybe a girl after me, but that period of time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is not really like singing anybody's song. Like, we were making the movie for very mercenary reasons. If you put the words Die Hard on a poster, it will make this amount of money. You can just statistically project out how it works. And it's almost irrespective of the quality of the movie. And I was like, wow, this is not really inspiring. And I thought, well, okay. The only other thing I know how to do is engineering. I guess I could look, there's this startup scene that's developing. I could look for problems where I think I have some idea of the solution and go raise some money and do startups, right? So I did this with two companies, raised about 3 million for each. Both failed. It was humbling, maybe humiliating is a better word. I felt really embarrassed because a lot of friends had seen me leave this job at Fox, which was, from the outside, a pretty prestigious job. And they were like, what's Puri doing? And then Puri fails miserably. It just wants to fall into a hole. I mean, I'm serious. You go to dinner at a restaurant, and you bump into your friend Aaron. Aaron's like, hey man, how's your thing going? And you're like, terribly. I just want to kill myself. Like, it's really, really bad. You know? So I ended up moving to New York, which happily is where I met my wife, randomly in yoga, and spending some time thinking about what had I learned that was interesting at this point. And this is really the genesis of what I do now, which is I looked at how there were high performers in both businesses I'd been in this creative tech sort of the technology of film, as well as the technology company that has some creativity in it. And high performers I'm talking like the guys who get $1 million a script, the 10X engineers, like that sort of person where you go like, wow, how do they do that, right? They had ways of managing their brains, managing their energy, managing their days that were very specific. And I was like, there's something to that. And then, of course, you read the books because smart people have written a lot about this stuff. It's not like an original idea under the sun.
Right.
And we can go deeper into that, but you realize there's a great body of work. And I thought, how do I take all of these disparate things from, Clear and Near Ale and Cal Newport and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, blah, sort of put it in one clean place and make it available? Because I'll be super blunt. Like, I procrastinate. I have medically diagnosed ADD. I get overwhelmed sometimes thinking about what I have to get done, and it paralyzes me. And my partner Tony and I worked on something that's just like, how do we make that available? Probably because we would use it, and now a bunch of other people use it. So that is how we got here today.
Yes. Well, I love it, and thank you for honestly sharing this story. We kind of joked at the beginning, everyone loves to talk about themselves, but really, a lot of people don't.
They do.
And so I do appreciate the journey and sharing, the exciting elements and the not so exciting. And then I definitely really want to get into the productivity piece because I can relate with the ADHD and procrastination. And even right now, I've got a paper due, and you know what I do? I start up 17 projects that are now going to be half finished because I'm deflecting on this deadline.
You're the same person.
I mean, this deadline is a couple hours away, which means I got plenty of time to do other things, So I completely get it. Before we get to the productivity piece, as you were talking, there's things that I want to come back to. Mm-hmm. You're talking about working on these movies, and I'm thinking in my brain from the outside, not understanding the industry, but I can imagine it's just like education, where it's like, oh, this opportunity for creativity and all these amazing people, and I know they exist, but at some point in there, right, there's something wasn't lighting your fire, right? And so as you're working through that pressure, the deadlines, the jobs, the movies, talk a little bit, because I think it'll lead into your productivity work. What was some of your process? Like, I think this idea of creativity, of this idea of taking risks, we hear this, we scroll it on social media all the time. This is not new. And yet so many of us don't lean into those skills. And yet we all want to be more creative. We all want to act on our ideas. So how did you continue to build those skills while also being pressured to be that at the same time, right? That, to me, that's different than me being in my garden and going, I'm going to be creative with flowers. There's zero impact on the world of anybody's life, right? But for you, there is money, there is branding, there is company, there is Hollywood. And the expectation is that you just do that probably all day, every day. Talk to me a little bit about that. That's fascinating.
There are so many good hooks in what you just said. Let me say this. I'm going to tell you two stories.
Yeah.
Both these stories illustrate something that I saw at the circus, right? That worked. And I think they'll relate very much this idea of like, oh, so creativity is a business. Like, how do you work in a business when it's like you have to have the idea, right? And there might be a bonus story at the end. We don't know, right? Wait, if you're good, there's a third story.
That's right. All right.
First story is this. When I was making the segue from USC into film, right? That interim job that I had was one where I worked at what is essentially an ad agency, but it did exclusively trailers for movies, commercials for movies, right? So we didn't do soap, or like cars or stuff like that. And I, at this point, was like 19-ish years old. And the agency was owned by these two guys who were both been doing it for like 20 years, incredibly respected in their field, right? As promotion guys, as ad guys, right? Sort of the Mad Men of film. And my job at that time was I would get the movies in. They'd be sent from whatever clients, which are largely Warner Brothers and Buena Vista, which is Disney, right? And there'd be rough cuts. Hey, man, we have the summer movie coming out next year. We negotiate on this. We're going to pay this amount of money. And I would choose a writer-producer to watch the movie and write a trailer, right? And then we'd start the back and forth of the studio. Do you like the script? So I would assign these out. So Jeff, who was one of the two principals of the company, came to my office one day. And Jeff inexplicably always called me Stevie. Only person in my life that's ever called me Stevie, but it'll make sense in the story, right? So he comes to my office. He goes, Stevie, do you know Bart? And I was like, I've met Bart. He works in the vault, in the tape vault. Yeah. He's like, you ever given Bart a trailer to write? I was like, you're talking about Bart, the guy who drives the tapes and drops them off around Hollywood, right? That Bart? He goes, yeah. I have an instinct about him. And I was like, Jeff, man, you've been doing this forever. Like, who am I to question? You think Bart should try his hand? Done, boss. You got it. Okay. 2 days later, Jeff comes to my office. Stevie, how's Bart doing? I'm like, Jeff, I gave him this, Warner Brothers B title like 2 days ago. It's a month deadline. He can spend the weekend. I'm not going to blow his, mind up with pressure.
Right.
And he goes, okay, fair enough. What else did you give him? Jeff, he's never written a trailer before. Like, I'm going to give him 2 things and have him just, what? I don't understand what you're asking me. And he goes, Stevie, let me teach you how creativity works. It's always about the other thing. If you give Bart one trailer to write, he's going to stare at that with little beads of sweat coming down his temples, and he's going to write the most obvious B version of that trailer you have ever heard. There's a part of your brain that does the, peanut butter, chocolate. What would that be like? It's not the part you think you're thinking with. So if you don't give him something else to think about, he's going to fail. Can I tell you, in 20 years doing this, it was amazing advice given to me in my late teens. I've seen that proven true with engineers, designers, writers, costume designer, and any art where you need that thing going, but what if? It rarely comes from the thing where you're staring at the whiteboard going, okay, so he's got the sword and the dragon's the next cave. What does he do? And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Aaron. Tell me, but often I have great ideas, and people generally have great ideas when they're doing something else. They could be walking, doing the dishes, showering, driving. Does this ever happen to you?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a great book on the neuroscience of this. And again, anything smart I say is probably I'm a conduit from someone else smart. I'm just carrying the water. Okay. So Olivia Fox-Caban and Judah Pollock wrote a book about exactly this, because we share a bunch of friends who invented stuff. Inventor of Siri, inventor of Bing, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, guys, how do you do this, right? There is neuroscience around sort of the executive and default mode networks. And it's this thing about, in order for the back of your brain, figuratively speaking, to do I don't know, what does a cell phone taste like? That your executive mode network would never think like put cell phone in mouth, but the little baby mind is like, I don't know, could be salty,
Yeah.
That has to be free. And that's why you often find, and I do too, I was driving and I had that idea for the book when I was thinking about it this morning, I couldn't come up with a decent idea. And here's a great chapter 3 of the book, sort of thing. So that's one thing I noticed. And it was thanks to Jeff Callahan, who to this day is a friend, retired, but like amazing dude. And I'll tell you another story about a creative trick that I saw. And this goes back to Roland and Dean. Remember we did Independence Day together?
Yeah.
So before Independence Day, they'd done Universal Soldier and Stargate and some other things. And they had this villa down in Puerto Vallarta in the hills that they would rent. Sort of like Airbnb before there was Airbnb, right? And I've never been there, but apparently it's $5 million white marble. And Dean would talk about there's a room where the light comes in the morning over the pool, and it just inspired them to write. And they never thought in that room about what their agents needed or box office or going out and do. It was just like, there was a magic to like being there. So as the story goes, when they were going down to write, the next thing, Roland told his assistant, Joey, Joey, you rent the villa, Joey, She comes back. She's like, it's rented. And it was like this hue and cry around the office. Like, oh my God, what are the guys going to do? I don't think. Roland called his entertainment attorney, John Deemer, who's an amazing attorney. John, buy the villa. Monday, Roland owned a villa in Puerto Vallarta. Where those renters went, no one knows, but they were paid to not be in that villa Monday. And the guys went down there to write in that room with the light in the morning over the pool. And they wrote at the time the 3rd highest grossing movie in film history, right? And it was like a very interesting thing for me to go like, wow, that's how important this thing is. They They have enough money. Roland, like Dean's father produced Jack Nicholson's movies. He came from money. Roland's father was like basically the John Deere of Germany.
Sure.
They could do whatever they want, but there was something they had trained themselves about this. And it's not to say that you have to have money to use this technique, right? Just like the other thing technique, you don't need money to do it. When I was working with Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orsi, who were the writers, Transformers 1 and 2, Eagle Eye, Star Trek 11, Zorro, Mission Impossible 3, a bunch of stuff, right? Fringe, amazing guys, right? Actually, Bob just died recently, which is really sad because he's a wonderful guy. And they, when they got into crunch time, would go across the street. We were on the little Amblin part, the DreamWorks part of the Universal, lot. They would go across the street, have their assistant rent them a room at the Universal Hilton, which I'm just going to say is not a luxury property. It's where you bring your kids for a night before you go to like ride the rides the next day.
Yeah.
And they would work there. And what I realized for them is that was their creative space because they met back in like high school, college. And I think it evoked for them that feeling of like, we're scrappy college kids in our dorm room. And, Bob sitting on the edge of the bed with his laptop and Alex sitting at the little desk with his laptop and like, we're going to make it someday. It brought them back to that place of like, we got to go write something great to make something of ourselves. Right. And they did that routinely. It was like, we have 2 weeks to turn in Transformers 2. Get the hotel room,
Yeah.
And again, it's an easy thing to implement once you are aware of it, is I've trained my mind that there's a room in my house, one of the upstairs bedrooms, that when I need to do a certain kind of coding thing, like, we built a website that's all about, how to make these tools available. And it was like, I go up there and it's true. I don't really think about a lot of other stuff because when I do, I leave. Hey, I'm done with my thing. I'm going to go downstairs, socialize with Laura or see friends, whatever, go to get something to eat. And I come upstairs, I sort of fall into this mental state. And I didn't used to do that. I made a mistake when we first bought this house where I would in the morning be in the kitchen with breakfast, sit at the breakfast table, beautiful light, work there for a while, come upstairs for a while, afternoon, sit on the sofa with my laptop on my lap, and like work that. And it was very chaotic mentally as opposed to I'm going to my office. And my brain just sort of settled in and going, oh, we're going to do this thing in a focused way. So there you go. As promised, 2 stories.
I love it. And I want to get to learning spaces, especially like remote spaces you were just talking about. So I want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. But before we do, when you were talking about the idea of kind of having, 2 tasks, so to speak, the ideas that come to us in the shower when we're walking or exercise, one of the things that I see in education, I also see it just in terms of like all the things that you can read online about being productive and how do we keep all these hacks, right? And how have you found it? And I think this will lead into some of your work that you're doing now around productivity and burnout. This idea of creativity or coming up with ideas or being able to think deeply in a world where everything is so scheduled, everything is so pressured, everything is like let's just redline all the time. Where I feel like we've lost like the art of being bored. And I think about this in education where like every minute is now like scripted and scheduled. And it's even hard for kids to even have like recess time because, we got to be doing this, and this. And I see this with my own children. Like everything's organized sports. Like kids just don't go to the park and play. Like we got to have
play kickball.
A travel
Who's
team
around?
or whatever, So I'm saying all that in a way of, I'm still thinking through your work in the tech startups in Hollywood where there is pressure. What were ways in which you were able to find time for both, right? Like there is an expectation. I'm not saying in this world we can't have deadlines, but I also worry that we don't give kids, and I'm looking and thinking at schools, time to go like have a walking buddy in the hallway. But yet we want kids to produce high levels of thoughts, to be creative, to be innovative, but we don't give them any downtime. It's like, be creative now. And that's not how it works. And so I'm just trying to like connect your world. It's high octane. You got to produce these scripts and movies and trailers. And in education, it's the same thing. Test scores got to go up. Schools got to look good. Kids got to learn. And we forgot like the human element of like is like the best ideas do come in the shower when I am being bored, when I am being distracted with something else. How have you found that in your research around like productivity or in your work? There is a fine line balance, and maybe there isn't a balance, but you got to have both. And I feel like we keep squeezing the other tasks, so to speak, out of it to be productive and performing all the time.
Yes. Okay. There's a lot in what you said. I'm going to respond, I think, to the
Yeah.
core of it, and then ask me to expand
Yes,
if I don't hit all
I
of it.
word
Okay?
vomited a lot right there.
So, and I'm going to make this very personal, which is Laura and I are having our first child. Matter of fact, just went to the ultrasound yesterday.
Ooh.
Saw a little guy with like legs and arms
Yeah,
and
it's
little
real.
face and stuff, right? So we're down to like going to the last trimester. So we've been thinking a lot about what you said, like childhood today, because I have stayed away from having children my whole life. So I've never really contemplated. I think of like, oh, how will I raise kids? What is the world like? You know, what school should they go to? Never been a thing. So we had a lot of thought, a lot of energy going toward this. And I'm going to say this back to you and tell me if I'm hearing you, is because you are right that when we were little, there was a sense of like, I could go out in the street with a ball and find some people just rolling around, you know, all the kids would go play kickball or dodgeball or whatever, right? Right. Whereas right now it's like, listen, you really need to have the baseball thing on your resume because you're good at the thing, and you have this community service, and then you have your study, and then you've got your ice skating lesson, you got like thing, right? Then you're like, oh my Lord, right? So there is definitely a sense of, if I were to see my son, let's say at 14, lying on the sofa, what could be called daydreaming, would I perceive that as, oh my God, this is what it looks like at 14, the guy at 28 is lying on the sofa smoking pot and like playing video games. Is that the extrapolation of this? Is this what that looks like at 14? Oh my God. Or is that the thing where he sits up in 2 years and he goes, a cold fusion would kind of work like this, I think. I think what people have been missing is this. Or I think I know the great American novel I'm ready to write now. Or, you know, something like that, right? How do you discern which path that is? Like when that, like you said, sort of unstructured time is leading to, oh my God, or oh my God.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I will answer it this way with the little asterisk. I'm not an experienced parent. I have taught a bunch. I've taught computer science a bunch. So I've done some of that, but I've never been a on-staff, full-time paid professor anywhere, but sort of thing. I've taught a lot of classes and all that. So this part could be wrong. This is not where I'm an expert, but I'll share with you my thoughts on this, which are, I have noticed that in environments where you have, let's say, a leader and you have, you know, contributors, right? Which I've seen a lot in the professional context. The thing that has been the most successful is when the leader does express that there is a mission, there is a thing we're here to do, and there is a culture. This is how we do it. This is how we're going to treat each other. This is how we're going to treat collaborators, competitors. You know, this is how we relate to the rest of the world, right? So in the business context, if you as a leader express very clearly, we are here to cure cancer. We will treat each other in this way. We will treat our competitors in this way. We will treat our patients in this way, right? Then you attract an individual contributor, an IC, to the organization that is going to contribute. Like the whole debate right now around like RTO, does that have to be the thing? Can people work and be productive remote or hybrid, something like that? And I think a lot of that fear, if you really go down the 6 whys, like, why are you worried about people not being in the office? Well, why are you worried about it? It comes down to, on leadership of fear, they haven't hired well. Because let me tell you something, if I'm trying to cure cancer and I have a team of 60 people and I meet Aaron and his dad died of cancer and he's passionate about this, I don't have to watch you. You are going to be thinking about that and moving the ball forward. But if I found you on Indeed and you've had 2 jobs in the last 2 years where you're just bouncing around, I'm not hiring well because you're not really engaged with the mission, dude. Right. You're looking for a job, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think some of that maps to non-professional sort of, relationships where if I look at my son at 14, he's lying on the sofa daydreaming, and I think to myself, is he on the path to be a great filmmaker? Is he on the path to be a great painter, writer, artist, inventor, something, right? A lot of it, I think, comes down to what's the culture in my family. Is it a culture where he feels disempowered? He's like, why do anything? Life is hard, life sucks. Is it something where he feels like everything's going to be handed to him? It's like, I don't need to achieve anything because dad's going to give me his wealth, something like that. And those things, I think, come again back down to culture. Maybe it's not a paid corporation we're talking about. It's an individual sort of like family unit, but it does have a lot to do with when you are the IC, when you are, maybe a student or something. do you believe what you're doing is meaningful? Do you believe it challenges you? Does it speak to you? And if you need moments, like you said, and this brings it all home about being unstructured, unstructured, I think can be fine as long as you have a direction. But if you're unstructured and you have no idea what to do with your life or what you should be doing with your time, then it does become, well, I guess I'll open TikTok. And then, I mean, I rail about this. Laura and I have enough friends who work or have worked at, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, old Twitter, and TikTok. And they have the money to pay top dollar for the best engineers, the best behavioral psychologists, the best designers to say, hey, man, come here. And by the way, my business model is steal everyone's life.
Right.
Period. Full stop. That our business model is simply, can we steal your life? And a lot of people raise their hand and go, yeah, sure, take my life. And they're like, great, I'm going to take your life. I'm going to sell it to this advertiser. I'm going to keep the money. You are never going to do what you're capable of. But please keep scrolling, right?
Right.
And that I view with this generation as serious a threat as like my parents' generation with smoking. Where it's like, oh, the movie stars do it, and it's this cool thing, and looking in Betty Davis or whatever the hell it was, right? And now, I look at it, I'm like, wow, that was like a death sentence. How would you possibly like inhale that stuff? And like all your friends have died of emphysema, lung cancer, like high blood pressure. And at the time, it's like all the stars do it,
Yeah.
So anyway, long answer, but you had an open-ended question.
So really good. So as you're talking about that, I mean, I think about that. I just interviewed a guest the other day, and he was talking about totalities and the totems of technology, and not just like technology for the sake of technology, but the implications in culture.
Yeah.
And I got me thinking about myself on my own practices on my phone. It got me thinking about my children, particularly my youngest, who's 14, and
you have 3, right?
I have
like
3,
19 to 14.
Yep. And so she can't escape Snapchat. She can't escape the notification that pings every nanosecond. So as you were thinking about productivity, for that generation, but for all of us, I see just as many adults are just as bad. I was just in Canada, and one of my biggest takeaways, someone asked me, like, what was the best part about it? I said, the best part was dinner. We'd all come together, and nobody was looking at their smartwatch or phone. And people don't do that to be disrespectful. I was like, everybody was truly present, and it was awesome. And, we come back here, and you go out, and someone's always checking. I mean, I'm guilty of that too, but we're not truly like in tune. And I think there's a human energy to that I think does spark innovation and creativity, and just a reminder of like how wonderful it is to be human,
and to be able to do something. If I could jump in for a moment, I have a very strong thesis that we all have something great inside us, and the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? And these companies are all fighting to make sure you do not.
Yes.
If you are going to write the great American novel, if you're going to be the next Michael Jordan, if you are going to invent cold fusion, whatever, you will not do it in Snapchat, in Instagram, in Facebook. And as much as they can present, we talk, often in film about people have a facade and they have the real self, right? They have the presenting thing. So like I may say, oh, Aaron, like we got to go to this Starbucks on Tuesday. It's so great today. My presenting things, I love the coffee there. When we get there, you realize there's a cute barista that I know works on Tuesdays, right? So I have my presenting reason of like, the coffee is so good on Tuesdays. The real reason is like Jenny. She's really cute.
That's right.
Right? So yes, most of these corporations present as, we're just here to connect grandmothers with photos of the grandkids, to bring people together across cultures. And when you look at what their algorithms do, it is absolutely hypocritical. They're like, we will sell you to death.
That's right.
For money.
That's right. Yeah.
Gosh. That at some point, I hope it's like what happened with tobacco, where people went, oh man, Uncle Aaron died and it was bad. Seeing him waste away with cancer. Oh, how do I not do that? How do I actually do the thing of which I'm capable? And that is my mission now for the rest of my life, is to help people, the ones who want it. So you have to have intention to do the thing which they're capable, and do it in a way that's healthy.
I love that. So, if someone's listening here, whether it's they're thinking about their own app usage, or they're just thinking about, that thing inside them that they've always wanted to do. I know that there are, I
Yeah.
mean, all my friends and professional educators and people I work with, we all talk about things, gosh, like I would love to do that. And yet year after year, I don't see them do that. So
I'm going to tell you a story.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm
yeah.
going to dive in. So, for those who don't know, Aaron knows this already. There is a website that I built that has a community of productivity minded people. People come together, and it's basically a flow state app. It helps you, gives you all the ingredients you need to be in a flow state and accomplish more. Like the thing that comes to mind when you say this is there is a guy that I saw in there who is a high school, what's it called, assistant vice principal or vice principal or something in Missouri. I'd see him in there because you can turn your camera on if you want to like work with other people and do it. I'd see him in there a couple nights a week, sometimes on weekends, like a year or so, right? He dropped into the group chat what he was working on each day. Hey, I was doing this thing. And one day he dropped into the group chat that he finished his dissertation. And people respond. They're like, oh, Roy, we've seen you in here for a while. Like, what exactly have you been doing nights and weekends? He goes, well, I'm a, assistant vice principal at this, whatever, this high school in Missouri. And I've been working my PhD in engineering. And, having this side hustle, I only get a couple hours a night of focus. I use Sukha to like really pack that 90 minutes so I can move forward with my life. And I just turned in my dissertation. Everyone's like, oh, that's so great. He's like, not so fast. Actually, I still have to defend it. Like there's another big step with me in a panel of people, right? There's like, that happens like, I'm going to make this up 3 weeks from Monday, right? And all right, cool. Everyone's like, great. What is interesting is the weekend before that Monday, a bunch of people in the group chat, which around the world, I know they don't know him. These are people like in all these weird countries, right? Including the United States is weird, right? But they were like, hey, Roy, we're thinking you, man. You got this. Like, we got your back. We're excited for you, right? I was like, that's really cool. None of these people know him, but they feel like they're part of a fabric of people who are trying to do something with their lives and like focus. And Roy's like, I have a limited period of time because I'm in a school all day long. If I'm going to get my PhD, I got to make use of this 90 minutes, right? So Monday, he doesn't post anything. Everyone's sort of like watching the group chat, like, anyone talk to Roy? No. You're in it? No, right? Tuesday morning, he posted, you may now call me Dr. King.
Oh, I love it.
And people went ape shit. It was one of the best moments of my professional life building this, to see the support of people who genuinely don't know him, but they're like, they're pulling for each other, right? Do something with your life. So when you talk about all the people who say, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and da, 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 I love the fact that he used this to go, I'm going to get my PhD in engineering. I have somewhere to go. I have something to do with my life. And I just need the best tools possible to make use of the time that I have. And that I think is a really great instinct. Not everyone gets there.
Right.
A lot of people say it, and you're right. You find them on the sofa scrolling.
Yeah.
And they end up the old guy or girl who's like, I could have been a contender. I could have been no.
But I think there's something there, and I want you to talk a little bit about your platform with that, because I think it is so cool what you've created. And I think for that space,
Thanks.
right, where like we don't feel alone. And I think ironically in this day and age, if we want to do something what we feel to be amazing, we downplay it because we do live in a world of mediocrity. And I don't mean that like that sounds really terrible, but like not a lot of us want to stand out, right? And so trying to find people who we can surround ourselves with that get it, that we actually like want to take this risk, because taking a risk is scary. I mean, you talked about you had, two startups that didn't go well. The fact that you went and had a second one not work, I mean, most people would have been like, oh, nope, I'm done after one, So tell me a little bit about like your app story and some of the power to that and that idea around productivity, because I think that is such a missing ingredient that I think is easier for us to get ourselves around other like-minded people than we think.
I appreciate you saying that. For those listening at home, or in the car, wherever you are, at the gym, let me spend just a minute explaining flow states for those who don't know flow state, just to set the table. And then I'm going to actually talk to you about what you brought up relates to a really interesting member story that I have. So one of the things that I learned was really sparked by, I took a flight from Austin to San Francisco. It was an Alaska flight. And I had to do some designs. I had to mock up some like graphics to show my team, be like, I have this idea for a feature, all right? Got on the flight, pulled out my laptop, The flight took off and landed, and I was like, oh shit, we're in Dallas. Like the engine fell off. Something bad happened because we'd been in the air about 10 minutes. We'd been in the air for 3 hours. We were landing in San Francisco. I couldn't tell you if the drink cart came by. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't talk to my seatmate, but my designs were done. The Wi-Fi had been off on that flight. There was no way to get Slack messages or text or WhatsApps or emails, right?
Yeah.
And I got there and I didn't have to race to the hotel to try and finish before the morning's, meeting. I went to dinner by myself. There was like a great lobster roll place right by SFO. I'm like, let's have time to actually go have a lobster roll, right? So I was really, really happy. I was like, what is that thing? Of course, you read The Smart People, and there is this seminal book on flow states, which is called Flow. It is what named this thing, where Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was a Hungarian-American psychologist, said, hey, I have this thesis that there's something these high performers do to get into those concentrated states where they do the work that moves their life or the world forward. Like they have this common thing, whether they're athletes or artists or inventors, they seem to talk about it in very similar ways. And they use sometimes slightly different words. Like Michael Jordan talked about being in the zone. I think he has that great quote about like, when I'm in the zone, it's me and the ball. And what he's saying again, it's sort of like me on the airplane. It's just like, there's no scoreboard. There's no defenders. Like when I get to that place, I'm unstoppable. It just, the entire world comes down to me and the ball. Right. And Picasso, there's a quote of his that I always mangled where he talks about like, yeah, I was up all night. I forgot to pee. I didn't eat or drink, but hey, Guernica, what do you think? Do you like? Is it nice?
Right.
A few nights, but like that's sort of like experience. So Mihai said this. He said, I'm going to choose the word flow to describe the state because I like the metaphor of you can be on the river, you can be paddling under your own power, but if you align yourself properly with the river carries you forward and magnifies your own efforts, right? So hence the term flow state. So that is a foundational idea that I just want to say about what I'm contributing to the world right now. It's incredibly powerful. Some of you may have had that and experienced that and saying, oh, I've totally been there. It's amazing. And yes, you look up after an hour, you've done 2 or 3 hours worth of work and you just feel healthier and you feel good about yourself. So what Mihai wrote is he said, there's some common conditions that, sort of like conditions precedent, if you will, that seem to help. I'll name a couple of them. He's like, you have to believe what you're doing is meaningful, right? If you're sweeping the floors, you're probably not going to get into a flow state, right? You have to have skills that apply. It's not Michael Jordan painting, right? Or playing baseball. It is something where you have to be challenged. It's not Michael Jordan playing with 8th graders, right, but it's playing in the NBA and the finals where it's just like you're at the edge of your ability and you're doing something that is great, right? And, he talks about how the world falls away. There's a lot of research on how music helps for most people. And we always have the friend who listens to 90s gangster rap or heavy metal or whatever to get into flow, right? Mm-hmm. But for most people, it's about 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, ambient, non-vocal. I happen to have a bunch of friends who are film composers with time on their hands who wrote about 1,000 hours of music to these specs. So we have in Sukha in the app, which is a desktop website. It shouldn't have gone an app. We have all these different playlists. If you want to listen to lo-fi sort of flow music, upbeat, down tempo, or some people like soundscapes. If you want to listen to rain in the Himalayas, we have 2 hours of that. Or Emerald Lake up in Canada. If you want to hear the birds at Emerald Lake and like the water sloshing, you hear that and a bunch of things like that. You can hear a coffee shop in Vienna, Austria, right? So there's this oral environment that a lot of people use to sort of block out distractions. Blocking distractions is really important. So some of the things we offer are like the ability to block websites. So if you say, oh, here are the websites that distract me, I'd love to be nudged if I open these when I should be working, right? So you can put on their Facebook or CNN or news or whatever, or shopping, Etsy, I don't know, Shine, whatever, your poison is. And you get a little nudge. Same thing with your phone. You can set your phone. So if you pick up your phone, which is my biggest one, is I will hit something that's frustrating to me or hard, and I'll reach for my phone, just get a dopamine hit of scrolling. Right. We made the simplest thing. There's just a QR code on the screen when you open the website. You can shoot it with your phone and you just put your phone down. If you pick it up, your little smart assistant will say, hey, Steven, are you being intentional? Like, do you need to be on your phone right now? Right. And it's
Mm.
just helpful. Right. So things like that. Now, the story I'm going to tell you now is Set the Table is that's kind of the app I built. You hit play and music starts and blocks your distractions. There's all that is it was really like a single player game. I, as the founder, talked to a lot of members in there, but none of them talked to each other. It was almost like a hub and spoke where I was like, there are these hundreds of people who are out there, but they have no sense that there's anyone else out there, right? So I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if they could talk to each other and, like you said, be part of a fabric? And then I thought maybe that would be the most distracting thing ever, and it will destroy the app. Everyone's just going to chat, and it'll turn it into Twitter or Reddit or Quora, or I don't know, something, right?
Right.
So I put it in to a couple of the members. I was like, I put this question. I was like, what do you think about this? And this one member, she's still a member today. She said this to me. She said, Stephen, I can go to the Nike store and I can buy a pair of running shoes. They will sell me a left shoe and a right shoe. I put them on my feet. I run. It works great. But there are 100 million people in the Nike Run Club. Because when you run together, you run further and you run faster and you're more accountable. And the days that you suck, you don't want to get out of bed, your friend comes by and is like, come on, Puri, let's do this thing. And you feel great. And the days that, Aaron sucks, I go by his house. I'm like, come on, man, let's go for a run.
Yeah.
And that feels even better when you're like holding your friends up. Or she's like, you should do it. Can I tell you, it's my favorite thing in the app now. It's community people who are all here for a reason. And you go on Twitter and people are just rage baiting each other.
Yeah,
It's a culture of like coming at each other. You go on Facebook, it's a culture of, stupid stuff. Instagram is all like influencers selling you energy drinks and garbage stuff. And I'm really happy. We've attracted people who are all like Dr. King now, right? We're like, hey man, I am trying to do something. I have 90 minutes a night and I need to maximize that time because I want to do something with my life. Period. Full stop. We're here for you.
I love it. I love it.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And I think that's so awesome that there is, kind of that single player aspect of it that people respect. But at the same time, you're not alone and you have that support when needed. But everybody kind of has the same understanding. Kind of goes back to your leadership aspect, right? The vision and mission. Like people are there for that collective reason. So they're not gonna, make it something that it doesn't need to be because they can get that on those other platforms. And so I think that's so powerful to have. So, as we continue to talk about this with your website and the research, the work that you're doing, and I know you talk about not just productivity, but I know you get into remote work. What are some of these things that maybe we get wrong when we're thinking about how to be productive? Or you could take remote work. I know they're different, but there's crossroads in there as well. I'm just thinking through, like, as you said, I get a million newsletters about how to be productivity. I scroll and I do see the productivity hacks. And I don't know that I've necessarily become more productive. I mean, I'm effective. I get my stuff done. So I'm just, as you dive into this and you're running your platform and you continue to read and you have the network of people that have kind of know the ins and outs of the apps that don't help us be productive and everything else, what are some misconceptions or places where maybe the average person doesn't spend enough time trying to learn more about, maybe like the better question about this?
Let me answer from my own pain, my own foibles, okay? And if anyone else out there nods their heads as I say this, God bless. So I mentioned earlier that I recognized at a certain point in my life, I procrastinate. Like, it was just a natural default state of mine. And I get overwhelmed. And I'll tell you exactly how that occurs and where the pain was in my life. So I would call it the cold start problem, which is, Aaron, tomorrow morning at 9, I got to get going on writing my blog post, whatever the thing, do something, right? And at 9:15 tomorrow morning, I would find myself still returning some emails and, maybe scrolling real quick to check anything in the news I need to, call it what it is. Procrastination. It was me not starting at 9 on the thing that I knew I needed to do, right? Where that shows up is at the end of the day, where I'm like, I didn't finish. I'll get up early tomorrow. I'll get this stuff done in the morning before I start tomorrow's work. And, tomorrow you tell yourself the same line at Domino's during the week. And you know what I'm saying, right? So that caused me a lot of pain, where it was not just not getting the work done. It was me and my view of myself, where I started to be like, you suck. Like, you're really not good at this. You can't get your work done. You're not a good person. You're not effective. Like, snowballed in my mind. And I don't think I'm alone in having that negative self-talk sometimes, right? So, you know that old thing about, the 6 whys, right? Like peeling the onion, right? So when I did that with myself, which is like, okay, well, why do I, okay, well, peel back. I procrastinate. Why do I procrastinate? Well, I feel overwhelmed. Okay, well, why do I feel overwhelmed in the morning? And it usually came down to one of two kinds of overwhelm. And there are other kinds for other people, but this is just me. I would look at my task list, 17 things on it. You know what? They all need to get done. And it was paralyzing. It's just like, how am I going to get, I can't get them all done. And it would stop me from doing as much as I could do because I was just staring. It was staring me down, right?
Yes.
Or there's something on there that's so big. I'm like, write my book. I'm not going to make a dent in that between now and the 1:00 podcast, or I'm not going to make a
Right.
write my book, right? So what I did was, in looking at that again, you read. I hope I can bring the knowledge that a lot of people have written about to a simple place, but designed like a smart assistant with Tony, my partner, where it just asks me in the morning, hey, what are the 3 things you really need to get done? Like, I looked at your task list. I think it's these 3. Cool. We're going to want to swap one out. And then as soon as I hit play and the music starts and, the distractions are blocked, it hides the other 14. I can't see them.
Mm.
So when I look up, I just see the thing I'm working on and the next 2 things. And that's enough. It's just like on deck, in the hold. Got it, right? Because my ADD brain wants to kind of multitask and maybe jump around. And I should probably work on this a little bit. Maybe I can knock that out. Okay. It's like, no, here are 3 things I started to do. And it just helps me a lot. When we implemented that in Sukha, 77% more likely that our members finished all 3 than when they could see the whole list. They would finish 2.
Wow.
And there's no magic to it. It's just the thing of like, you don't feel overwhelmed. You look at it, you go, I can get that done. 3 things. Got it, and you become those little wins build during the day. You get a couple things done like that, and you're like, maybe I don't suck, And if there's something on there that's too big, the little assistant will be like, hey, Aaron, you know what? Write your book is a noble goal, but maybe the task for today is just like outline chapter 3. I know you did chapters 1 and 2. You want to just outline that, and then you can time box it. And you actually said, early in our conversations, you were talking about, hey man, I have only this amount of time left to do something. The funny thing about time boxing, and I'll say this to make it less scary, is any of these techniques, pick one and just take a baby step with it. Like, there are 17, things you can do, and it's overwhelming again to go like, I'm going to time box and be healthy and do this. And, one thing, like if you want a time box, try it for a week or 2. It's amazing. Right. When you say I have 45 minutes to do this, you do. And people who tell me they don't time box, when you dig down, you're like, well, tell me about that. Well, when I was in college, I would always do my term papers the last day, and that sort of thing, right? So the funny thing is, you can say to them is go, okay, so you absolutely would time box. You would just force the time box to be the last 24 hours when the thing was due. Like, you time box, buddy. Don't lie to yourself. But you just do it in a high pressure way. What if you took that same 24 hours? You did it a week earlier when you weren't like sweating bullets, You could time box anytime. And that kind of is a revelatory moment. You go, oh yeah, you're right. I've been passively time boxing myself the whole time. So anyway, just some thoughts for you.
No, I love it. I mean, it's so funny because I am still classic analog of notebooks. And
whatever works for you, man.
I do the old school. I sit down on Sundays and I write down all the things I got to get done, and then I try to like strategically fit like, okay, what could I realistically do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? But as you're talking, what I find is if I don't get a task done on Monday, I'm like, oh, I'll get it done on Tuesday. But I don't get a task done on Tuesday. Next thing you know, by Wednesday now I'm up to like 5 or 6 tasks, and I'm right back to
Dude,
where I didn't want to be.
You.
So I like that idea where I can this is the only 3 things I could see, and I might it is helpful. It's like these little things. I think I'm glad you shared it because we could all do it.
Would it be great? Because I've had that 6 p.m. where it's just like, oh man, would it be great to at 3:00 be like, kind of done? Like I kind of like accomplished the big things, like not rolling over into tomorrow, the stuff I didn't do today, but actually done. That is how I named my company. I don't know if you looked this up anymore, but Sukha is a Sanskrit word for happiness, for self-fulfillment. Yeah. And it comes from a dude who's used our platform. There was an early version of this that had a working title, And Laura, whom I met earlier, remember we talked about, she met her in yoga in New York. When we got married, we went to Bali, which is a nice honeymoon if you do yoga, because there's a lot of yoga. It's a tiny little island, right? So we're going there. I said to her, you know what? Next 10 days, no one's going to bug me. I really hope I come up with a name. I would like to have a name for this that's cooler than like Flow State app number 4.
Right.
Like the way Amazon is just a cool name for something that's not really a bookstore. Nike's cool name, not really a shoe company. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd love to have something that's just like weird and distinctive. And over time, people go, oh, yeah, that is kind of like representative. And she's like, great. I wish that for you. Good luck. So when we got there, I was like, I think something would feed my unconscious mind is, do you mind if I do a quick Zoom, like 5-10 minutes with a couple of our members and just go, hey, what do you love? What's your favorite feature? Right. And maybe over the next 10 days, like whatever they say will kind of bubble up into a word or a concept. And she's like, go for it. I'm going to the pool, my friend. But you do that. I will see you at dinner. Right.
You do you. Yeah.
Exactly. You do you. Right. So it was the afternoon. I posted in the group chat. I was like, who has 5-10 minutes? 3 people said, yeah. I asked them a question like, hey, Aaron, like, I know you've been in here for 6 months. Thank you for using this early version. What do you love? Right. Oh, you love music. You love the assistant. You have the timers, the task list. With it. The third guy, I was going into the wrap up where I'm like, Aaron, thank you so much. I said 10 minutes. I want to be respectful. It's 8 minutes in. Let's wrap up. And he says to me, Stephen, you didn't ask the right questions. And I was like, okay, well, what was the right question? He's like, you should have asked me why I pay you. I'm like, okay, it's like 30 cents a day. Like this is not like a Birkin bag a week.
Right.
I didn't think that was a big barrier. I deliberately, I don't collect a paycheck for this. Neither does Tony, my partner. We do it for free, right? So I was like, as long as we're paying, the Amazon Web Services bill and the Google Firebase bill, I think we're kind of okay. But okay, so why do you pay me? And he said, so I have 2 kinds of days. At 3 o'clock, I can be playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I can feel down on myself and be like, where did the day go? I realized the difference between those days is, did I use Sukha in the morning to manage my time? So I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. Okay. Wow. I was like,
yeah. What more needs to be said? Goodness.
Yeah. So I have dinner with Laura, and I was like, I talked to this guy who was more articulate about what I'm doing than I am. Like, this is what she's like, that's really good. So we were brushing our teeth, and Laura looked at me. We were going to bed, that night. And Laura looked at me and she was like, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms, prana, life force, and, dharma and karma. She's like, he described you as Sukha, that feeling of just like you're in your lane, doing the thing you're meant to do. And like, you're good at it. You can do it with ease. She's like, that's what you should call your company. And from bed that night on my little phone, I was like, I wonder if the Sukha company is available. And the domain was available. I bought it for $14, I think, on Network Solutions.
Awesome.
Done. We have a name. So that's
cool.
really, that's where I hope people get. Like, I didn't want to name it about the tools. I view the tool as like the path that you walk on, but the place you want to go is Sukha.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so good. Gosh. I want to be respectful of your time, and I feel like I could just
we've talked about a lot of good stuff.
We have
a lot of good stuff. I hope people are still listening. They're not like,
oh, they will. No, I'm telling
ever.
you, no, this is they're gonna be dialed in. I don't have a single doubt in that. So
talk about school supplies. Where do you get your school supplies?
Yeah, we could talk about school supplies. I probably don't want to hear about that. Yeah, let's see. We're recording in July. That means they're on the precipice of a new school year. They're not probably quite ready to be processing.
Think about that.
Tissue boxes and expo markers. So the last question I have for you, and then I will wrap up where people can find all your work. We'll get that in the show notes. Is one of the big things that I'm passionate about as an educator, also as a parent, is just this idea of being a lifelong learner. And in education, we're always trying to figure out, what are the skills that we're trying to instill in our students? I think about this as a parent, like, what are the skills I hope my kids have? I mean, the world is constantly changing and pivoting, all insert whatever, famous tagline goes in with that. Through your journey and career, working through all the stuff that you've done, and now with your website and working with people with productivity, what do you feel are some of those key domains or skills that you really think are, man, if I need to stay relevant, stay productive, stay happy, keeping my Sukha lane, so to speak. What are those things that you see time and time again with yourself, people you've worked with in the community, that
Okay.
I'm just thinking through that in education.
Yeah.
We have a million words, and I'm just thinking about your to-do list. It's too much, right? We list all the things, and so what are some of those top ones
I,
that
I
that
will
arise?
I will answer that and give you a story that was very meaningful to me. So as I'm going to have, my son in 3 months, been thinking a lot about this and thinking a lot about my mom and what she said about teaching, right? Because she really raised me. My father is awesome, but he's quiet. He's a quiet guy. Um, and the sense of openness and curiosity to ideas, I think keeps you relevant and keeps you alive. And I'll give you something that I saw, which is as I was coming up as a development executive in film, worked with a lot of writers, a lot of producers, some directors, you're having creative conversations. Hey, Aaron, it's the end of the second act, and he's got the flaming sword and the bow of destiny and the, dragons in the next cave. And I don't know, what should he do? We haven't seen, that sort of thing, right? See a lot of like creative conversations. Or what if, what could it be? So by the time I got in my career, that I was at DreamWorks and in my first meeting in Steven's conference room, right? The whole Southwestern beautiful decor and the thing, right? And I'm like, kind of like, I'm sitting at the table with Steven, like Stacy Snyder, the chairman of the studio, like the president of the studio, my counterpart, two writers. Like, I'm here. Like, if you told me when I was 18 years old, I'd be sitting at a development table just like BSing about story with Steven Spielberg, I'd be like, that's not gonna happen. Here I am, right? Maybe the dumbest person in the room, but I'm in the room.
Yeah.
Okay. And something I saw in that first meeting absolutely affected me, which is I'm going to change the details a bit out of respect because I don't want to share stories about Stephen directly, right? I don't want to talk out of school. So we're working on a project that had aliens in it. Obviously, Stephen has done movies with aliens before. A lot of people have done movies with aliens before, right? So there was an idea proposed by the writers I'm going to make up, which is like the alien should, come up out of the basement and, come through the door, right? And Steven said, no, I think the alien should come through the wall. The alien should have been in the next room that close and just comes through the wall. And when, of course, Steven said something, writes down, alien comes through wall, right? Within 2 or 3 minutes, the conversation hadn't really moved on, but it was continuing. Someone who I'm going to call the coffee boy said, through the wall is a cool idea. I feel like we saw it in, Jim's movie, but I think that thing might be coming through the roof as if and I thought to myself, oh my God, the coffee guy like contradicted Steven Spielberg. This is his last day at the studio, maybe on Earth. I don't know.
Right,
Maybe
right.
bad things happen to him.
The alien's gonna get him. Yeah.
All right. This is just, I was like inside, I like clenched up and cringed. And Steven was like, yeah, it's a better idea. Okay, we should do that. And the conversation moved forward as if nothing had happened. It was like, best idea wins, doesn't matter where it comes from. And I noticed that as my career got to that place, I was working with like the top A talent. It's mediocre talent that is very precious with their ideas, very possessive. The top talent is like, they're confident enough to go, hey man, like I want to make the best movie possible. If my kid has a great idea, if I hear a great idea from a podcast host I'm listening to on the drive into the studio in the morning, like I want this to be great. It's not about, I want it to be mine. I want it to be great. And that openness to the coffee boy just going like, actually, Stephen, no, not what you said, but this other thing. I seem to be like, yeah, let's do that. And no one burped. There's no weirdness. It was just best idea wins. That I love. I hope I can bring that into my family, that there's not like a dad said this. There is hey, we respect dad, we respect mom, but also if someone has a better idea, that we all kind of go like, actually, what he said.
Yeah.
So that's my closing story for you.
That's fantastic. You know, the last thought nugget that I want to extract from you, and then
Mhm.
we'll get where we find is just
Okay, so not my
I'm
last
cu-
idea. Okay, let's
I
keep
know you
going.
have a lot of ideas, but I'm going to pull out
I have two good ones, but
your
you know.
last idea. 'Cause that story just kind of got me thinking. The name of this podcast is "Living on the Edge of Chaos," and so the work that you do obviously is for us to live a little less chaotic. So
Mhm.
what's one? I promise this time, final
Okay.
piece of advice to our listeners. If we're looking to try to be more creative or more productive, to live a little less chaotic in our life, what would that be coming from you? And I know
This
you've shared
probably
lots of stories here.
for me, it probably comes from yoga, and it was really about intention. And an ex-girlfriend of mine, who's still one of my closest friends, Laura loves her too. She was the director of marketing for Yoga Works. So when we dated like 15 years ago, whatever, she gave me a class card. She's like, "Hey, you should try this yoga thing." Gave me a mat and a little like 8 class card or 10 class card. Right? I went and did it, sort of out of obligation. Like, hey, my girlfriend wants me to do this. I did it. Checked the boxes. The next day after the last class, was not thinking about, do I get to go to yoga today? Right? Didn't go again. Thanks. Okay, a year and a half, 2 years later, I was randomly traveling in India with my father and some family friends, and happened to be in this like national park. It's like a forest called Ranthambore, which is where the Royal Bengal tigers are. Right, middle of nowhere, kind of. I was walking through the forest alone, and there was a young Indian guy there who was going to lead a yoga class in the middle of a clearing. And I was like, I don't have anything else to do this afternoon, so I did this. And it was myself, this other guy who showed up, and the leader. And at the end of that class, I wanted to call Allie and be like, I wasn't ready before for the gift you were trying to give me. And my intention for doing it was sort of obligation. Like, I love Allie. She wants me to do this. I'm going to do it. I'll get the points for being a good boyfriend done. And this time I actually had an intention of like, well, what is this thing that he's going to do? That he's standing in the middle of the forest for free, just leading a yoga class, right? And the clarity I felt and like how I felt spiritually, it was not how I felt when I was doing it back in Hollywood. Um, and that sense of intention, I think, is really important. When you have clarity on what your intention is, it really changes how you treat yourself, and of course, how you treat others.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So, yeah, Stephen, I want to be, I promise, respectful of your time here. This
All
has
right. So one
been,
more question.
yeah, yeah. So on the page 27,
Can I
this
tell you, when I
truly
was
had,
young, I thought penultimate meant ultimate. I thought it was another way of saying ultimate. It wasn't until like somewhere, I think around high school or college, that someone was like, actually, penultimate doesn't mean what you think it means. I was like, oh, okay. Note to
good to
self.
know. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Good to
good to
know.
know.
Yeah. Thanks,
Just take
Larry.
that feather in the cap there. I appreciate it. This has, I mean, honestly, truly wonderful. This has gotten
It's
me
super
thinking
fun.
a lot about just a lot of great things I'm passionate about, new ways to think about that. And so, man, I'm so just gracious that you've carved out time and even extra time past what I told you it'd be. People at a red light, people are walking, people are, doing that second thing, trying to get that spark of idea.
Yeah.
Where are some of the best places for them to find you and your work? And I'll get all of it in the show notes. They all know that,
Oh,
but
very
it's
simply
always
this.
good to put it out
If
there.
there is anything that I've referenced, it doesn't have to be about what I do for a living, right? Or what I do, what I've created. My email address is very public. It's Stephen with a V at the Sukha, which is TheSukha.co. Email me if you're like, hey man, I'd love to read that book that you mentioned, or can you tell me about this? Or is there a blog post about time boxing? Or I get back to every email within 24 hours, unless I'm sick or traveling. I will reply to you. Here's a link to Cal Newport's post. It talks to what you want to know, right? It will not be a long email. I don't have time to write everyone back like the story of my life and all that. But I
Right.
promise I'll get back to you. Um, and then if anyone does want to find, more effective ways of working and healthier kind of ways, come join the community. It's free for 7 days. You can try it out. No credit card, no funny business. And it's of course at thesukha.co for company. So TheSukha.co. And come say hi in the group chat. Be like, hey man, I heard on on the chaos. Chaos.
Absolutely. Well, man, thank you so much for all this. Truly,
This is
it's
awesome.
been
It
a
flew
pleasure.
by.
And I know this is going to really resonate with a lot of people and get
I
them
hope it helps.
thinking in good, positive ways. And so just so appreciative of all you do. Keep doing the awesome work. And you definitely got a new fan from me moving forward. So
That's awesome. However I can
definitely
help.
love this conversation.
Thank you to whoever is out there listening at this point. Thank you for sticking around.
Absolutely.
Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.